Per-
There we
Perfect.
go.
Okay. I was asked by a lot of people that we want to record this. They contacted me. Okay. Let's miss this.
So I'm just curious, is pretty much everybody on the East Coast? Anybody out here on the West Coast, or
West Coast.
where are you at? Brett?
We're in San Diego.
Oh, okay. So we're up in San Francisco.
Excellent. And who's talking? Is that James?
Yes. Oh, I think I've talked to you, or is Joan your wife, or
Tara.
I was emailing somebody. I'm sorry.
No, no problem at all. Tara is my wife. She's also on the phone call tonight. Yeah, so we're down in San Diego. We're what are we, Tara? We're 120 days away from calling it quits in San Diego and heading towards Argentina.
Nice.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Hi guys, thank you so much for doing this.
Hey, no worries. We're happy to do it.
Okay, so we'll get started, and then feel free to jump in with any questions. This, like I said, this is going to be super informal. I'm going to leave my contact information also in case you have any questions about, navigation or where we've been. If we go too fast, that sort of thing.
Legal procedures.
Legal, yeah. Anything that you might have a question with, definitely feel free to ask us. Let me make sure. Okay. So what we're going to do is just explain who we are, when our boat was launched, all that good stuff, what our background is, what we did wrong, what we did right, where we went, and what is there to see and do.
Nothing. I was trying to move that up.
This I can't. Yeah. So this is Dave and Janice. We just splashed Singara in November 2021. So that was definitely challenging because obviously we went through the majority of COVID during the boat build. We put our deposit on in June of 2019. They started our boat right after Halo. I think was the last boat that was built before us. And then they built the GT version, which was the first version that we built. So we're not the hybrid version. We still have the generator but we do have the lithium, the full electronics, the full bimini. And I'll go some of the changes now that we sailed 5,200 miles on the Antares, pretty rough conditions and some locations, very long passages. We definitely had some feedback for Mariano and Memo and that sort of thing in the Antares factory. We'll go through some of those as well too. So we splashed in November 2021, but everything was still locked down at that time. So even when we left Brazil, Argentina was still locked down. So if you were an Argentinian boat, let's say it's in Uruguay or in Brazil, and you're an Argentinian citizen, you still could not get in Argentina. But I know things have changed a lot. I know you can probably get out of Argentina right now, but I'm not sure if you can cruise in Argentina. But obviously Memo and those guys will have that information because it's been, obviously about 6 months since we've been down to that kind of area.
And when we were there, we couldn't move the boat even when we got there to check it out. After it was in the water, we were not allowed to move it from the dock. We have no sailing experience at all in Argentina.
Right. So yeah. So we can't really explain a whole lot of Argentina.
By boat.
By boat. Yeah. By land, we know everything by land. We were there probably for 4 months off and on over the 2 years. So we know Argentina, I think, pretty well, but not by the water. A little background information about ourselves. So we've owned 2 boats previously. One was a 44-foot cat. It was a Dean catamaran out of South Africa that we bought about 8 years ago. And we did circumnavigation of the Caribbean. We know everything about the Caribbean as well, too. You can ask us any question about any island. We know all those guys. And we always stayed basically in the Caribbean, Eastern, Western Caribbean, and then South America, like Colombia, Panama, et cetera. So over the last 8 years, we sailed about 15,000 miles on the Antares. We did about 5,200 miles. And then on the 44-foot cat, we did, I don't know, about 10,000 miles. And then we had for a brief stint, we had a monohull island packet for about a year. We just went to Bahamas and back and sold it. So we're definitely catamaran people, without a doubt. And then feel free, if you guys want to jump in, just yell at me, and I can talk for 4 hours here about all this stuff. So I love it, but definitely feel free to interrupt. Yeah. So what did we do wrong? So I did a presentation earlier about Argentina and the boat build and what changes we made to the GT version. With a new cockpit layout, with this, the new windows in the salon. I mean, we did a ton of changes with Memo, and they incorporated that into the GT version, which obviously will be carried over to the hybrid. We installed 900 amp hours of lithium, all that good stuff. All the inverters, which we can explain a lot more about what went right, what went wrong, because there's a lot of things that did go wrong with that portion that we need to fix out in Grenada. And we can talk a lot about that later as well too. But what went wrong? As Janice mentioned before, we were in a really weird circumstance because of COVID. So when we went down to Argentina to look at the boat, we went down initially to actually put the deposit down, check the factory out, meet with Memo, because we did want a lot of changes to the boat from I think the GS version, or whatever the other version that was before us. We liked a lot of things, but living on the Dean 44, which is a very similar boat, we knew what we wanted in a boat and kind of want to change the layout and a lot of the things that they had on the previous versions. So we went down there in June 2019. We went down there again to basically check out the boat, which was still under COVID restriction. So as Janice mentioned, we couldn't take the boat out of the slip. It was not legal for us to do that, even though the boat was finished. We did live on the boat for about a week and a half, about 10 days, just to test all the systems, the plumbing, the toilets, the batteries, the air conditioning, all that stuff. We were not plugged in at that point in time. So they have, which is another issue, but they have 220 power down there. And on Zingara, I'm not sure about your boats, we do have a transformer, so it allows us to plug into 220 or 110, but we did not plug in at that point in time.
But testing all the systems while you're just sitting there unable to move is really not much of a test either. So we had a few surprises.
Yeah, so we did find a lot of issues with some things even at dock that we reported back. I mean, just simple things. Some cosmetic issues, some functional issues, some things that we had some solar power problems at that point in time. We were blowing fuses, and so it is good to flesh that out at the dock. But I think what's more important, if the waters are open, is spending a lot of time doing sea trials, and I think that's one of the bigger problems that we weren't able to do with them. Because I've sailed a lot of miles. I know what should work and not what shouldn't work, and if things are weird, especially in big sea states. So there's just things that we found with the boat when you're in 6 to 8, 10-foot waves. It wasn't like things weren't secured properly, and a lot of stuff you would not, or I would never have found out just by going even to Chesapeake Bay. So, I would really encourage everyone that's getting a boat, go through everything with a fine-tooth comb, and don't leave Argentina until you're completely satisfied that all the systems are working. Unfortunately, we didn't have that luxury, just because we had to export the boat because it was in so long in Argentina. They had to move it to Riachuelo, Uruguay, which is literally right across the river. It's about a 5-hour motor. In order to export the boat. So we're never able to plug it in. We were never able to test all the systems at shore power. We were never able to test all the systems with Antares under big seas.
So one thing that I would add here is we did test it with Memo, just leaving Riachuelo and going out out of the river and going out into the open river part, out of the creek and into the open river part. And we had a little bit of waves and stuff, but we only did it for like maybe an hour. I don't think even that long. And so I wasn't cooking. We weren't doing anything on the boat. We weren't walking around on the boat. We weren't opening things, using things. And so that was a problem. So we found later that you really need to be able to get out, test the boat while you're using it, living on it, to really understand what you need to have done before you leave.
Yeah. So we presented a list of, let's say, 25 items to, when we were living on the boat, to Antares, and primarily Sancho was our main contact, of all the issues that we had, like the solar panel kept on blowing fuses, and they were on it right away. I mean, they were at the boat every single day, and all of them were small. Nothing was major at all. But I wouldn't have felt comfortable about going long passages until all those things were ironed out. And I can give you, if you guys are more interested in the list of things that went wrong, we can definitely provide that to you. But the Antares support was absolutely fantastic, even through the entire trip. And I'll explain that in a little bit, but even all the way to Grenada, and even in Grenada, Antares was with us, all the way. So they really backed their products. And we'll explain kind of some funny stories along the way as well too. But I was really happy with the support that they provided. So I don't think there's anything like that they overlook just because of negligence and that sort of thing, or it's okay. I just feel that they put the boat together and it wasn't really properly sea trialed under like harsh conditions, or they weren't living on the boat. So there's a lot of things that, like power consumption, issues that some of us had, you would not have found unless you're literally living on the boat for like days on end, which we can explain that a little bit later. So again, I kind of beat the dead horse on that one. What we did right. So again, I talked about this in our earlier presentation. I would absolutely highly recommend if you're a new owner, you're making a lot of trips down to South America in Argentina. So like I said before, we made an initial trip to Argentina just to spec out and understand if they could build the requirements we had for the boat. And then the second trip we went down to Argentina, we brought down 5 suitcases, which was not enough. So in our earlier presentation, again, I'm not sure who joined on that one, there's basically nothing that you can buy in Argentina of quality, like dishes or silverware or boat parts or anything of that nature for a sailing vessel, like a cruising sailing vessel.
Even for comforts of home, there's just nothing nice.
Yeah. Our boat's up for 110, so they don't have 110 appliances, for example. So simple things, everything's electric, so if you want to try, if you have an induction oven, or I'm sorry, induction stove, getting induction pans are impossible. So you have, I'm just giving you a few examples. Bedding, all that stuff, it's better if you bring all that down.
So every trip that you make to Argentina, bring max amount of suitcases with you, so that, and then they're really great about it at Antares, storing everything for you. They'll give you space in the warehouse or the workshop, whatever, and store everything for you. Totally take advantage of that. We can't stress that enough.
Yeah.
Bring it.
Yeah. So if you're in doubt, like EPIRBs, ours gonna come with an EPIRB. We still have an EPIRB. We just simple things that I wish we kind of knew, and that's why we're giving this talk to encourage people to bring stuff down. Again, we can go into more detail if people are interested in that stuff. Then once we did shop around Argentina quite a bit. So like our presentation, we spent 3 or 4 months down in Argentina over the course of a couple trips, and we did a lot of shopping to see what was available. And then we realized, okay, we need to bring everything down. So when we went down to Uruguay to pick up the boat, we brought 14 suitcases, down. So 50 pounds each. We weighed them. We bought, crappy suitcases, and then we brought them down to Uruguay and dropped it off. And I wish we did that. Like I said, the second trip we did.
Yeah, it still wasn't enough. We couldn't get everything there, and we couldn't get anything along the way. Uruguay does have a little bit nicer quality things, and you can find a little bit more, but still things like induction pans and things, you're just not going to find it. It's no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next point here is that we used Antares Crew to sail from southern Uruguay, Riachuelo to Angra, Brazil. And I would highly recommend that as well. They charge $3 a mile. We went about 1,000 miles, so we spent $3,000 with them. But we had an Antares Crew. We had Mariano, which I think is fantastic, on the boat at all times. And not only, like we had some concerns about certain things that weren't issues. And then what he really showed us primarily is how much that boat can, hold on one second here, how much the boat can actually handle. Try and bit this guy.
You can't just hit return.
No.
Uh-oh.
Is everybody still here?
Yes.
Okay, good. I can't let him in.
There's no mouse.
Hold on one second here, people like you. There you
Oh,
go.
there you go.
Sorry about that. Okay. So where was okay? So Mariano. So we hired him to take us through the first stretch. And if you look at a map, obviously Argentina primarily and where we're in Riachuelo is basically Buenos Aires, is very far south. When we were leaving in January, it was very warm, because again, their seasons are different, completely opposite of the States, or at least in the East Coast here. Their summertime is January through June, and then their wintertime is June through December. So when we left, it was pretty hard sailing. So, we were, anywhere between 20 to 30 knots of wind pretty much consistently, 6 to 8 foot seas. So, and we're pretty experienced sailors, but, he really showed us how much we can stress the boat. And anyone who's familiar with Antares, especially the people that are on the call that have it for a while, the sails are really undersized. So it's a 44-foot boat and only a 63-foot mast, where, typically a 44-foot boat, the masts are a lot bigger. So the sail area would be a lot bigger, but it means that, it's a lot safer boat. So we were in, 25 to 30 knots. They weren't reefing the sails. We went 17.1 knots was our max speed on that trip. We were going consistently between 12 and 13 knots the entire way. So it was on that stretch going from Riachuelo, oh no, I'm sorry, Pirapolis, which is a little further north, to Angra.
So I just want to add in there, when you're going that kind of speed on this boat, even though it's a catamaran and very stable, you're still holding on. I mean, it's
a
sailing
ride.
it pretty hard. But I gotta say, if you get the opportunity to sail it hard like that, and by the way, when you're that far south, you're looking for a souther to go through, and you're kind of storm chasing so that you have the wind going with you rather than against you. So with that said, you're going to be sailing in a lot more wind than you normally would. But the advantage of being on the boat with someone who's a sailor of those particular boats and a racer, like they're trying to get every little thing out of the sails and out of the boat that they can possibly get. It's quite an experience, and it's wonderful to see, and it builds so much confidence in the boat and what the boat can do. Dave and I will never ever sail it that hard and do what they did, but I'm so glad to have experienced it and seen it, so that we know if by chance we get caught in something by surprise. Even in the Caribbean, when you're coming out from between two islands, you might get smacked with 35 knots that you weren't expecting with your full sails up. But we know that that's not going to be a problem for this boat, and so we really have the confidence in it. And so I'm really glad that we got that experience.
Yeah. One thing to add too is that we were really happy with how the boat performed. It is a really good sailing catamaran. It's very fast. Like Janice mentioned, they didn't reef at 20 knots, 25 knots. We reef at 18. We're very conservative. At 25, we're double reefed pretty much on everything, just because we wanted more comfortable, etc. But we were so happy with the way the boat sailed. It is so easy to sail the boat. We had, again, a 44-foot 2007 catamaran, very similar kind of style, but wow, I think the Antares sailed 50% faster. The screecher on the front, we love.
Amazing
The
sail.
fixed, the fixed bowsprit that they have, so you can furl it in, furl it out. We were able to use that up to 18 knots of apparent wind, and they said 90 degrees or more off the beam to use it. We used it probably around 60 degrees off the wind, and didn't hold shape perfectly, but it is a big sail and a light wind sail. We were really, really happy with the sail configuration and how easy it is to sail the boat.
From the cockpit.
From the
I can't
cockpit.
stress that enough, because our Dean catamaran, we'd have to refit from the mast, we'd be going out and doing all these different things. We had a temporary bowsprit we'd have to fold out with a hand furler that we'd have to go out front for. Horrible. It's a horrible situation. And so it was wonderful that to do everything from the cockpit. It's so much safer.
Yeah, we like that a lot. The mainsail, we got the in-mast furling. We had the in-mast furling on our island packet too. This in-mast furling is phenomenal. So we can pull in and out of the sail, at any point of sail, you're going downwind, your beam reach, it's a remote control, so you can just hit a button on the remote, or, if you want a winch, you can, either manual, or there's another button control, obviously, at the winch itself. That was super easy. I mean, everything was, from the sail portion, was really, really easy. So, okay, what do we do right? Okay, so learn enough Portuguese to order parts, food, customs, integration. I'm sorry, that should be immigration, not integration.
You changed it and it changed it again.
So Janice spent about 3 months learning Portuguese on Duolingo. And that was one of the big challenges we had in Brazil. So, we know Spanish pretty well. We have a house in Guatemala as well too. So Spanish is not a problem, but Portuguese and Spanish is, they're definitely polar opposites.
Except I got to add in here that Spanish in Argentina and Uruguay is different from Spanish in Mexico or Guatemala or anywhere else that we've been. It sounds much more like Portuguese in the accent. It's very difficult to understand. So it's a little bit of a struggle, even if you know your Spanish, unless you're familiar with that accent, it's very, very difficult to understand. But once you get to Brazil, only like 1% of the people understand or speak English. And none of them speak Spanish either, really. So you're stuck having to speak Portuguese for almost everything. So if you don't know somebody or have somebody or hire somebody that's going to speak Portuguese for you, it is absolutely imperative that you at least learn some key things to get around.
Yeah, because we were in Brazil for actually 3 months, so 90 days was our visa. We were there literally 93 days, which we'll explain in a little bit. We're in Fernando. I think it's really important to learn Portuguese. I didn't learn it because I knew my wife was going to learn it. I knew enough to order food, but she had to deal with the customs and immigration, which was very difficult. And we can talk about a lot more about that. But yeah, so learning a little bit of Portuguese would go a long way. Only about 1 to 2% of Brazilians know English. So that's not going to be feasible at all. We did use Google Translate a lot, for really hard things to learn, or to get across, like customs and immigration, especially. So I think it's really important to learn the basics there. As I mentioned before, we spent 3 weeks on Zingara before going offshore. And when I say going offshore, I mean on our own without Antares. So I think that's really important. Spend a lot of time on the boat. Get familiar with it, because they are long stretches. The longest one we did, I think, was like 15 days at sea. Because if you look at Brazil, it is a long, long country, and there's not a lot of places to stop on the north shore, on the north side.
And everyone recommended we don't stop most places, that we go to Angra and we skip almost all the rest. And so it's a long sail when you're skipping the majority of it.
Yeah. So, and we can show you again where we stop and that sort of thing in a later slide. I would highly, highly recommend, and I'm sure Antares does this too, you have to buy charts. They don't come with charts, which is fine. It's very easy. They're just Navionic charts. You'll load in the chart plotter. We had 2 BNGs. They were fantastic. The charts were very accurate. I don't think we had any issues in any of the islands we went to in Brazil or Fernando or even Suriname. We went to Suriname as well, that you're going to have issues with. But I would also, if I know that someone's going to be launching or going down to Argentina in 120 days, I would get the Iridium Go as soon as possible. If you're not familiar with it or any new owners, learn it. Starlink's coming in the future here, but until then, until it's stable and worldwide, Iridium Go I think is the best for weather, passage planning, voice communications, texting, yada yada yada. So it's about
Tracking.
$1,500 for the unit, and I think it's around $120, $150 a month that you can cancel when you're not using it. I would highly recommend that over anything else.
I just want to make a small correction about the charts so that we don't leave any misinformation with you. When we were in Suriname River, the charts actually were off. And so you need to eyeball it and follow the channel markers and things rather than just following the charts. But that's it. Everything else was pretty spot on.
Yeah, but Brazil was really,
Yeah.
you're right. Most of them. And we recruited sailing crew during our trip. So we had, since we've been sailing for a long time, we met cruisers along the way that wanted to do this stretch of Brazil. So we recruited previous sailing friends that came along with us, because you can definitely do it as a couple. It's not a problem. It's just that, it's 15 days at sea.
And hard sailing.
Yeah, it's hard sailing. It's just a long sail. So the longest stretch that we did was going from Salvador, which is pretty far north. It's before you get around the hump of before you get the hump of Brazil. We picked up 2 crew there, and our motto is doing 2 on, 6 off. So we did 2 hours on, 6 hours off, and I thought that was the right recipe. If you have 3 crew, it'd be 3 hours on and then 6 hours off, basically. But it'd be hard to do with 2 people. Janice and I have done sales before, going from Belize back to the US directly. I think we did 6 days, just 2 of us. That was no problem because it's very easy sailing. I mean, it's only 15 knots coming out of the east every day. Now you're going sail changes, sails out of the north, it's out of the south, you're going down when you're going upwind. So you're constantly doing sail changes. So I personally, if I was doing this again, and I'm glad we did, we would definitely have at least 3. 3 is kind of the ideal crew, maybe 4, but I probably wouldn't have any more crew than that, and probably not less than 3 for this trip.
Just to show you on the map here what we did, the notch on the bottom right is where Antares factory is. That's where Buenos Aires is. So we sailed all the way from there to just before the first big hump sticking out, and you can see where it kind of dents in there. That's where Angra is, and then just east of Angra is Rio de Janeiro. And so that's where they recommend that you spend all your time on the boat. Leave the boat there and do inland travel from there. Don't leave it anywhere else. The rivers are unsafe. There's logs. There's not great. Yeah, no, for all of the Brazil of leaving your boat. This is just what they told us. Like it's not great to leave your boat in these other places. Everything is upriver, and they said it's the best place by far is to leave it in Angra. And there's a great guy there that they'll introduce you to that can help you a lot. So then when we left there, we went around that hump, and then we stopped just below the next hump that sticks out, and that's where Salvador is. So from the bottom all the way to that first hump, that was one sail, and then the next sail was to the next hump, and then the next sail after that is where it kind of goes out in the middle of the ocean, and that's where Fernando de Noronha is. So that was one hop. So they're really big, long hops. The longest one is coming from Fernando, those islands, going up over the top of Brazil, and then going down at that top where it dips in, our track dips in at the top, that's Suriname. And that was 11 days, 12 days, something like that. And it all depends, of course, on weather and everything, but you do get some current that helps you there. But they are very, very long hops. And the further south you are, the harsher the conditions are that you're going to sail in.
Yeah, and then we went from Suriname to Grenada directly, and that was like 3 or 4 days. I think it was 4-day sail. That was pretty short. So I know that Mark and other previous Antares owners put like a PDF file. There's a lot of anchorages along the way, that we did a lot bigger hops because we want to do it in 3 months to get to basically to Grenada or out of Brazil. I know there's a lot of other anchorages, but I know that they're pretty harsh and rolly and I wouldn't say unsafe, but if you're going to leave the boat for, a couple of weeks, they wouldn't recommend that. And I mean, jumping, if anyone has any I don't know, contradiction about that, just definitely let me know. But that's what we heard from Antares. The majority that you want to see is in Angra around the Rio de Janeiro, like Ilha Grande. There's a couple like Parachi. There's a lot of islands, a lot of great things to see around the Rio de Janeiro. What we also did is, because I wanted to go to the Amazon, I was kind of excited to take the Antares up the Amazon River. Antares absolutely said, do not do it by any stretch. We talked to locals and they said, do not do it. So what we did was we left the boat, which was very safe in Angra. And it was managed by a person named Hector, which was he was fantastic. We left the boat in Angra and then we flew to Manaus, and then we rented, we did a 10-day trip up the Amazon and had an amazing time. But we chartered another boat, which was a very local boat, to go up the Amazon, and I'm glad we did, because we would have been in big trouble if we took the Antares up there. So for many, many reasons.
But yeah, there are a lot of anchorages along the way, and you can stop for a night if you just want to take a break and rest. So it is possible to do that.
Yeah.
We actually had a pretty good experience in a bunch of the marinas as we went north. So this is Jason, by the way.
Yep.
And so we stopped in Salvador, which was a big city and just a huge amount of fun. And the marinas were very safe.
Mhm.
We didn't tend to go out much at night, but during the day we felt great. We also stopped in Recife, which was great.
Mhm.
And a place called João Pessoa, which is famous for, that's actually a place you anchor, but there's this guy that comes out and he's known as the alligator and plays a saxophone, and it's quite a tourist attraction. And then it disappears at 6 p.m. and it's just 10 cruisers. And the final place we stopped is Fortaleza, which is sort of possibly the worst marina in the world. But it was worth going to because it was neat to see Fortaleza. Medmore, broken boat parts, craziness. But I would recommend the marinas a lot. They were very affordable when we went, which was a while ago. And we felt safe, but we live in Manhattan, so maybe we have more risk tolerance.
Yeah, we did go to Salvador. We were there for about a week to 10 days.
To swap crew.
To swap crew and toward the city, and we drove all around there. The marina wasn't open at that time to foreign transient vehicle or boats just because of COVID. So we ran into a lot of that, but we enjoyed Salvador. It's a pretty gritty city, as Millie said, but it's fun. Michael Jackson went there, and they're really proud of that.
Yeah, that's something to keep in mind too, that our experience will probably be different from many other people's because of our timing with all the COVID and everything. And Brazil had really seriously just opened up. We flew like the day after Brazil opened to get to the boat. Yeah, because if Brazil opened up right when Omicron was kind of going nuts, so I was afraid that they were going to shut down Brazil. So as soon as it opened, we got on a flight, we jumped down there and got everything packed, but it didn't close again. And they don't really feel it's going to ever close again because it really hurt the economy. So yeah, we skipped those anchorages on the north side, as Jason mentioned. We did go to Fernando de Noronha. That's the Galapagos, they call it the Galapagos of Brazil, which is I
about,
object.
yeah, it's 200 miles southeast east of Fortaleza, or Recife, which Jason mentioned. It is cool. I mean, it's definitely, it's really weird, sailing out, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and all of a sudden you go to this island and it's like Hawaii looking and that sort of thing. But it is expensive. It cost us about $100 a day to anchor, and it was a really rough anchorage, which you read all the books, they'll tell you that, and it is rough.
The roughest we've ever been in anywhere.
And it felt like we were at sea a lot of the times. But it's if you want to go, it's great. There's a lot of dolphins. We did a lot of scuba diving. We toured all the island. We were there 10 days, so we were there quite a bit.
It's crazy though, because when you're there, you're actually closer to Africa than you are to going to Grenada.
Yeah.
So it kind of puts things in perspective about where you are when you start looking at it.
Yeah, so if you look at Fernando, one of our friends said, "Oh, you're about 1,000 kilometers closer to South Africa than you are at Grenada." That point in time, so that was kind of neat. And then when we left Fernando, as we mentioned before, we were going straight to Grenada, and then we were talking to some other friends that we met, and then they were going to head in Suriname, and it's very safe. You definitely have to, if anyone's planning to go to Suriname, definitely give us a heads up and give you some pointers on that. It's about 6-knot current, going into there, so you have to be really careful about timing the currents correctly. But very, very safe, and I think it's worth going. It's a nice break.
My
going
one point with that would be to plan it ahead, and everything is done by tours there. You can't just show up and do things. So if you do plan on going at all, try to book some tours before you even go.
Yeah, the Suriname.
Yeah.
But it's a nice break, good provisioning. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, but I know you've done this stretch before, but one thing that we had a big problem with is getting parts. The chandleries, in Suriname and Brazil, even Uruguay. Uruguay is a little bit better, but there's not a lot to buy. Now, Antares does give you like I wouldn't say survival pack, is probably the wrong word, but like, spare parts, like bilge pumps and things like that, which definitely came in handy. Definitely go through the list. They'll provide you a list of the spare parts that they put on board.
It's not extensive.
Yeah, it's not extensive, but it was definitely enough for us to get basically to Grenada. Challenge of the boat. Okay, so challenges that we had, like I said before, the issues of the boat, which we went over already. The Brazilian government officials. So this was, and Jason, definitely.
Can I do an issue with the boat? So one thing that I touched on, and I thought we were going to talk about here before he skips over it, is I was saying that when you test your Antares and you're not actually cooking or doing anything while you're underway, you don't really get a good feel for what it's like to live on the boat. So I strongly recommend going out there, and even if you're out just for a day thing, whoever happens to cook, I don't want to assign roles, but whoever happens to cook, go down to the galley and make lunch and cook something. Don't just make sandwiches, but actually cook something. Open the fridge and take things out, open the cupboards and take things out, try to put something on the stove and hold it on the stove, while you're doing everything on the boat. And you're going to find that there's some challenges. And for me, that's probably the biggest problem that I have with the boat, is that I feel everything was designed for sitting still at anchor, which even when we were in Fernando, when we were at anchor, we were not sitting still. It was like being underway. So it posed problems then. There's no hinges that hold cupboards open or the refrigerator door open or anything like that. I think it's going to be an easy fix. We're going to try to do it while we're in Grenada, or maybe we'll do it when we go to Guatemala. But you need to hold on one hand on the boat to hold yourself in place. You need one hand to open up the refrigerator and hold the door open. And then you don't have no hands to get anything out of the refrigerator. So then you start balancing on one leg, you hold the refrigerator door open with your knee, and you try to get everything out. So it is a little bit challenging to cook and do anything underway in the galley. And I don't know if Dave sent that as like a recommendation for changes to them or not, but that's the one thing you did. Good. Okay. That's the one thing that I really, if I were to change anything, I would change that, because it made it so challenging the entire trip, the whole way, going to Grenada. I was struggling with that. I'd be hitting the head with a refrigerator door, and it's like 20, 30 pounds. And it was just crazy. But I think once we get that figured out and all those things secured, then I'm going to love the galley. The galley's actually set up really nicely. I like the way I put a big sink in there, and you have the little window to throw things out. Everything's great, but you just got to figure out how to hold everything in place.
Yeah, the other issue, and this could be a whole topic on itself, and I'm not going to, a whole presentation on itself, is power consumption and regeneration. So just give you a little, and I won't go into I'll keep this to 2 minutes. But, and I did give all this feedback to Antares, by the way. So, and I know the hybrids are going to be a little bit different. So we have 1200 watts of solar. We have a 900 amp hour at 24 volts on the lithium battery bank. So the 900, and then we have a 6,000 watts of inversion. So 3,000 watt inverters. The inverters, the batteries are phenomenal. We do not need more than 900 amp hours. You know, we have engines. I know the hybrids have a lot more. That is plenty of juice. We can run the air conditioners. We can run the hot water heater. We can do all that, not simultaneously, but not a problem at all. Where the problem is around the solar. So we have 1,200 watts of solar. Oh, that's a lot, right? No, it's not a lot, and I'll tell you why. So on a normal day in Argentina, Uruguay, Brazil, it does get a little bit cloudy. Not as much, you know, it's obviously a lot more sunnier in the Caribbean, that sort of thing. The problem we have is that on a good day with minimal cooking, again, because everything's electric now, so the grill, the stove, the oven are all electric. On a very minimal cooking day, you know, at anchor, we're depleting our power by about 10 to 15% at the end of the day. So meaning if we are 100%, you know, the next day we'd be around 85%, then we'd be 65%, then we'd be, you know, whatever. It would deplete, and we would not be able to catch up, you know, from the previous day. And it was worse under sail because the way that the solar panels are positioned on the bimini is they're right under the boom, they're right under their sails. So at anchor, you have to pull the boom over. Okay, not a big deal. While you're sailing, you know, your sails are blocking half the solar panels. So now instead of 1,200, you're down to 600 at the bare minimum right away, right? So I gave the feedback to Antares. I know they're putting 1,800 watts solar. I don't think personally that's even enough. We are going to extend the bimini out by putting a small little arch and putting 1,200 more watts of solar on the back. And the reason one is obviously to increase the capacity of the solar, but also to make sure it's not shaded by the boom or the sails while we're under sail. So under sail, we're about 30% depletion over, and if she did some cooking, you know, from day to day. So I would have to run the generator about 2 to 3 hours a day. So I'd usually run it in the morning and I usually run it in the evening, just to let everybody know. So those two issues I think were the biggest, you know, issues that we saw. You know, not everybody's going to sail like us. Not everyone's going to cook like us. I get it. You know, 1,200 watts, you probably think is plenty, and that could be a plenty to a lot of people. I didn't feel that was enough, giving everything is electric and not gas anymore. We like the electric a lot, not having to worry about propane, all that good stuff that people are running to the bottles, etc. That's really nice because, you know, we used to do that in a previous life. Having the washer dryer on board, fantastic. You know, I know we're saying a lot of negative. There's a million things that we love about the boat. The support, the sailing capabilities. We felt, you know, we were 38, 40 knots, you know, in some squalls with sails up. You know, we felt very, very, very safe. Absolutely no problems. You know, we probably hit 10, 12 foot waves in some parts of the sail. Not an issue at all. So very safe.
Janice, this is Joshua. I'm curious.
Yeah.
It sounded like your comments about the galley underway. It sounded like you had some improvements in mind and stuff that you might can fit aftermarket. Could you elaborate on that? I'm really curious about some of the ideas for how to improve that situation.
Yeah, so we haven't really spoken to anybody yet that can help us design these things, but if you notice, and anybody who has the Antares, if it's set up the way ours is, when you open underneath where the stove is, there's some not drawers, but I don't know, cupboard doors, whatever you call it,
Yep.
that fold down towards the floor, and those have hinges on them and they hold in place.
Right.
But those aren't the ones that are going to flop around when you're going side to side underway. But it's exactly those type of hinges that I want on every single cupboard that's in the galley, every single one of them. Because when you're underway and there's nothing to slow the speed down at all of the cupboards, they're just flopping and banging into wood to wood, and I don't want to damage the wood. So I really want to have something that secures those. And then with the refrigerator, that's a little tougher to solve because there's really no place in the framework of the refrigerator to put a hinge like that. So for a quick, easy fix, we were thinking about putting some kind of hook that would hold it open. Even that, it's not a perfect solution, but at least it would make it so that I can get things in and out of the fridge without it beating me up, basically. So no, we haven't really spoken to anyone that can help us do a good design on that stuff. And if we come up with some great ideas, we'll be happy to share them with you.
Yeah, and this is just our feedback, because we cook. Janice cooks a tremendous amount. She bakes a lot. We don't go out to eat that often when we're on the boat. We go to a lot of bars and stuff like that, but we like to cook on shore or on the boat for the most part. I actually posted this to the Antares group, some of the challenges we had about the cupboards, and no one had an issue with them. So it seemed like we were the only ones, but
I have a little bit of a radical idea that I could suggest to people. I don't know how open people would be to it, but if I had to do it over again, I would do it differently. I really don't care for the electric stove that they put in there, because I don't cook teeny tiny meals with teeny tiny pots. I cook meals that maybe it'll make 2 or 3 meals for us, because we can freeze the leftovers, whatever, or use them while we're on passage. So I cook big meals in big pots. I cannot fit 2 pots on the stove with 2 burners. And then, the fiddles, whatever, that's a whole different issue. But anyway, I can't fit 2 pots on there. If I had it to do over again, I would not put in a stove. I would just not put in a stove at all. We bought these portable burners, is that what they're called?
Yeah.
Portable burners that are induction electric burners, and I can put them anywhere I want in the galley. And I would recommend having no stove and portable burners, 1 or 2 portable burners. And then the other thing, I don't know if anybody is really into cooking and likes to use air fryer or steamers or pressure cookers or whatever. But I did probably 80% of our cooking in my Ninja Foodie, which is a 9-in-1. It does all those different functions, and it stayed put. That thing is solid. It is heavy. It stayed on the counter in the biggest waves and the biggest winds, and I never had to worry about it. And because it closes and I can do things under pressure in there, I could cook just about any meal while we were underway. And I loved it, absolutely loved it, way better than cooking on the stove. So I know it's radical to say don't put a stove in your boat, but just food for thought.
yeah. Like she said, the Ninja Foodie, like I said, 9-in-1. So you can cook rice and barbecue wings and soups and
French fries
French
or
fries.
whatever.
It's a phenomenal device, and it's big. I mean,
Yeah.
it's very big. But we use that for most of the meals, because especially underway, she could put like a chili. We made chili for the crew one night or one day, and then we just consumed that chili for the next couple of days. And we just left it in that pot. So we just scoop it out there, and the seas were rough. It wasn't a problem. But we'll move on. I know we can do that. So the Brazilian government officials. So again, all Portuguese. If you guys watch the Delos episodes, when they were in Brazil, you're required to wear long pants, button shirt, and closed-toe shoes. And we forgot one time. We went in and we weren't allowed to go into the government building. So it is very difficult. So with Brazil, they're broken up into states. So you have like Bahia and
Rio de
Janeiro, and you have a lot of different states. You have to check in and check out of each state, technically. And when we checked into Rio Grande, which was the initial port when you get across from Uruguay into Brazil, which I would absolutely not recommend checking in there if you don't have to, then you have to check into each state if you go to land. Now, we checked into Rio Grande because it was COVID, and they told us that we had to go in there. It's a commercial port. They are not used to cruisers at all. So when we checked into there, they really kind of didn't know what to do with us. They were asking how many tons of cargo we have on board, and how many personnel. I mean, it's more of obviously a very, very large commercial port. Again, the only reason we did that was because of COVID, and there was only a couple, I think 2 or 3 ports in Brazil at that time that were open for foreign vessels.
I think that's changed and you can go to other places now, and we highly recommend you absolutely do not go to Rio Grande.
Yeah, and Jason, I don't know where you checked in initially, but my thought was probably checking into Angra directly, or another, cruiser, or touristy friendly port, because when they checked us in, we didn't get the proper paperwork.
They did everything wrong.
They did everything wrong. So when we tried to, go in and be legitimate and to check in and check out each state, when we were in Rio de Janeiro and then Noronha, we had a lot of issues. I won't go into all of the issues, and Salvador too. But we were very threatened to get out of the country, to leave the country immediately. We got it fixed, but it wasn't easy. So
and it took all 3 months to do it. We were not officially legal in Brazil until the day we checked out.
Yeah,
Actually, the day after we checked out.
and that's a whole other presentation. But again, I think if you check into Angra initially, where it's more touristy and less commercial, you won't have any problems that we did. But I would highly recommend not checking into Rio Grande.
Absolutely.
And I think if you check into Angra with Hector, he is amazing. He was our contact with Antares. He works for the marina in Angra. He speaks perfect English, or very good English. And if you have any issues with anything, I can't highly recommend that guy enough. He was absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Obtaining boat parts, I already beat that dead horse. You can't get any, and they're in Suriname, and it's a long trip. We talked about that already. I don't know why that pictures aren't coming up. So again, I think we talked about this already, but the highlights, because we had a lot of great times, was around Angra area. So it's basically south of Rio de Janeiro.
No, west.
Well, yeah, southwest of Rio de Janeiro. That was a great place, like a great place to leave your boat. It was great cruising ground. There's lots of islands. There's lots of things to see and do there.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. The water's great.
Great people.
Warm. Even though we had a problem with the Brazilian officials in about 3 different ports because of our paperwork, the Brazilians were phenomenal. I think Jason just touched on this a little bit, but we were warned that, Rio de Janeiro is so dangerous, yada yada. I would not recommend walking around at night in Rio de Janeiro by any stretch, or be out at night in bars and that sort of thing. We were there for Carnival, which we did experience during that time frame. But
The COVID version.
The COVID version of Carnival. But we had a fabulous time. The Brazilians are phenomenal. They love Americans. They like white people, or whatever. They like Americans.
They'll make every effort they can to talk to you, even if they don't speak English, and they're so patient with you if you try to speak any Portuguese to them. But if you do happen to chance across anybody who speaks the slightest bit of English, they will make a point to talk to you. You're going to stand out. They'll pick you out immediately that you're a tourist or whatever, and they'll want to talk to you. And I highly recommend taking the time to talk to them, because they're amazing people.
Yeah.
They really are.
The boat, the Antares boat sticks out like a sore thumb in Brazil. So there's not very many catamarans. We probably saw a handful of catamarans. Obviously, we're charter boats.
No
So when you're at the marina, everybody's stopping and looking, wants to talk to you. And like I said before, between 1% and 2% of the people know English. So it's, kind of doing a little dance and that sort of thing. But it does stick out like a sore thumb. But we felt very safe in all of Brazil. Didn't have one issue, didn't feel threatened. In Rio de Janeiro, which is another highlight of ours, we went to see the statue, the Christ
the
statue,
Redeemer.
Christ the Redeemer. We were there for a couple weeks in Rio de Janeiro. We experienced Carnival. There's lots to see and do in Rio.
We even toured a favela.
Yeah, we went to a favela, which is their shanty town, which if anybody's interested in that, I would highly recommend that. It's really, really a cool experience to see how they live.
Don't do it on your own. Do it on a
Yeah,
tour.
do it on a tour. And like I said before, we left the boat in Angra and for a couple of weeks, and then went up to the Amazon, up into Manaus, and that was a really cool highlight. And I would highly recommend that if people have the time or desire to go up to the Amazon River, because it is really cool. And we were probably about 1,000 miles, very close to Venezuela, up in the river. You know, we didn't go as far north as that, but pretty close to the border, and it was really cool. We saw a lot of indigenous tribes, you know, of how they live, and it's really neat.
Piranha fishing.
With piranha fishing and everything else too. So yeah, I think that's kind of the highlight. Again, I just want to share like kind of our experience. It's not going to be the experience of everybody, because I know we had a lot more issues than most people will have, just because of the COVID, just because we experienced all the things with COVID. But you know, just want to share that information.
This isn't your updated one.
No.
Where's the contact information?
I'll send it.
Okay, all right. Sorry.
So does anybody have any questions or concerns or
Anything?
Yeah, thanks for that. That was fabulous. I'm curious to hear a little bit more. Like early on, you had some comments about how they sail the boat really hard. And like, you know, when we get to 9 or 10 knots, we get pretty nervous because it feels like the boat's going really fast and there are a lot of heavy loads on things and whatnot. So the idea of averaging 12 or whatever you said is kind of blowing my mind.
Yeah.
What
So
is, like, yeah, what's that like? Or how do we, what are the things that you're looking for? Like when do you get nervous now that you've had that experience?
well, you know, it depends on the conditions, because your boat speed's going to depend on whether you're going upwind, downwind, whether you have current, don't have current. So it really depends on the conditions. We were averaging probably around 12 knots for a lot of it, and we felt extremely safe and actually pretty comfortable too. But we also had current in our favor, in northern Brazil area. But if we'd have been doing 12 knots, probably further south on our own without anybody on the boat, we'd have been really nervous. The 17 knots is not a normal thing. That was the max that we hit, and it probably only stayed there for a few seconds. But man, it's like, hold on, because the waves were big, the wind was big, and even though the boat was perfectly fine, it can take a lot more than the people on it can. So yeah, I was pretty nervous with that. Like I said, I'm really glad that we had that experience and we went through that with them. But on average, I would say we're probably more of an 8 knot boat.
Yeah.
So it has to be special conditions where you're going a lot more than the 8 knots.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so just to add to that, yeah, I don't know if I have a lot to add, but you know, we were going, you know, overall we averaged about 7.5 knots for the 5,200 mile stretch, because we have the BNG, so we can see our average speed the whole way. And there's a lot of days we had a motor of 5, right? So I wouldn't push that boat that, you know, and Jason, definitely speak up on this, because you sailed a hell of a lot more than we did. I wouldn't push the boat that hard, personally. They did not have a concern at all about going that fast, which is great, you know, because they built the boat and they know the boat what it can handle. I would have reefed a lot earlier than that, but and we do. I mean, you know, and it's very easy to reef. But you know, they have a lot of faith in the boat, you know, so, and we had absolutely no issues.
But we were probably reefed the majority of the time, just for comfort level, if nothing else, even though we knew the boat would be fine. When you're trying to cook underway, or you're trying to actually live when you're on a long distance thing, you really don't want all that speed, even though it's tempting to try and get there as fast as you possibly can. It's so hard living under those type of conditions that you don't want to have to just completely stop the boat so that you can cook. So it's better just to kind of reef it and slow it down and even out the boat a little bit more, just for living.
Yeah, and a lot of times when Jan's cooking, you know, we go downwind, you know, so it's a lot easier to cook if we didn't want to reef the sails, that sort of thing. This gets a little more technical. So as you get closer to the equator, there's an ITCZ zone.
Yep.
So it's right, you know, south of the equator, which gets a little sketchy as far as, you know, the time of the year that we were in there was a lot of squalls. But the radars are great, you know, it's fantastic. So we can see the squalls very easily during the day and night, you know, so we use the radar on quite a bit. And we, you know, a lot of times, you know, if there were big squalls, we took all the sails down. We just, either rode the current, or maybe we had a little bit of the jib, open, so we can refit really quickly and pull it in if we needed to. Most of the time our squalls would hit 35 to 40 knots, but it only lasts, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 minutes, and then it would pass, and then we have no wind for a while, So yeah, to answer your question, I wouldn't be nervous at all. I mean, you can slow the boat way, way down, that's why we're reefing the sails. Like I said, we only did that when Antares was on the on the boat with us. Our comfort zone, like you said, is around the 8 knots kind of.
But it's super easy if you feel like you're being overpowered and there's too much wind in the sail, and you don't want to stress the rigging or whatever by reefing it in. It's easy enough just to spill off some of that wind, let out the main sheet or the jib sheet or something and spill some of it off, and that'll slow you down. And then also, if you get stuck with the screecher out and it's getting to be too much, you can block it by putting out the Genoa or something to help you bring it in. So this boat has a lot of ways to make it sail more to your liking in an easy way. You don't have to leave the cockpit to do anything. And I absolutely love that about this boat.
Yeah. Hey, Jason, do you want to add? Because I know you sailed a heck of a lot more than us. Still there?
I think Jason dropped off a little bit ago, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's
I
what
won't try to. Hey, you also made mention, sorry if that question's over.
Yeah.
You made mention about charts and purchasing of charts and it being critical and important, obviously. But where were you going with that? Meaning purchase them before you've gotten down there, get on with B&G prior. Is that the recommendation?
Yeah, so we had kind of 3 sets of charts, I guess we'd say, for our travels. One is that they don't provide the charts for you, which I kind of didn't know the first trip that we went. Luckily, they told us like kind of in passing, like, oh, you need to bring charts down. So we just got the Navionics charts for South America and the Eastern Caribbean. I think it's like $150 to use in the B&G. And then we downloaded all the offline charts for the Navionics on our iPads. So we had a secondary charts that we used. I mean, we didn't necessarily need them, but it was nice to have it when we were, doing sail playing, that sort of thing. And then we had, all the weather, like I said before, on the Iridium Go. And that was critical because there's no weather forecasters. You don't have like, I don't know if people know Chris Parker in the Eastern Caribbean. He doesn't, they don't do weather planning. So you're doing all the weather planning yourself.
And there's some great apps to do that now.
Yeah.
Where they route out your route for you, depending on current, depending on wind, depending on everything. It's amazing stuff nowadays.
So what we would do is we would chart out, let's say we're going 7 days offshore. So we use predict wind, on the Iridium Go. Either, at the marina, so we'd use the web, it's very fast, or in the Iridium Go, it's slow, but it works. And then, it takes into account of, like Janice said, your sail performance. You can upload all your polar charts. You can, it'll take all the wind, the squalls, the current in consideration, and then it gives you the path. And then basically we would take points off that path and then we would plug them in the chart plotter, for the waypoints, and then we just hit those waypoints. And then I would download the weather twice a day, usually in the morning and the afternoon. And then if we had to change the weather, which, usually 3 days is pretty solid. After 3 days, it gets a little, loosey-goosey, but,
And then like how pilots put in a flight plan of where they're going and have somebody that knows where they're going to be or supposed to be. You should also put in a sail plan with people. And so, Dave, what was that program that you used that did the tracking and the tracking that people followed us?
That's a predict one.
So yeah, so he used the predict wind to, people could check in on there and follow us live and follow our trail so that they knew that we're okay, we're still sailing and everything. And we highly recommend that. I know all of our family members really, really appreciated that, knowing the type of sail that we were going to be doing.
John, you mentioned, bringing in your jib. Were you using the actual, like a jib if you had the self-tacking, or were you using your Genoa? You also mentioned your screecher, furling that, but So, because I know have a lot of problems just dealing with that Genoa and the way the lines lay into the cockpit for us. So
What's their boat number? What's the, hull, not the hull, well, we're 4426.
yeah, no, I'm number 10. So
Yeah.
I've got, yeah.
So they changed it significantly for the GS and the GT versions. So they actually lead
On the sides, right?
yeah, so to answer your point, the Screecher, the Genoa, et cetera. Yeah, so the Genoa is really, even the Screecher now also, they run all the lines underneath the, through the bottom of the boat or through the middle of the boat. And then it comes up and comes back, through the stainless in the back. They've done a really good job of handling that. So our winches are on the back on the boat. They are manual winches. And I asked him, I said, well, why didn't you put, you have electric for everything else. Why did you put manual for the jib sheets? Because you're definitely furling those in, a lot, or, not only furling them, but you're tightening and loosening the sails quite a bit. And initially it kind of was a pain in the butt, but I actually liked it, doing it manually. The furling system, I know you're talking about furling, not just adjusting the sails. The furling system's all automated now. So I can, by myself with the remote, because they're all remote control now, I can do everything myself. Janice can be down there cooking or sleeping. I can be on the side of the boat. I can be letting, the jib sheet out and then pulling the furler in by remote. It's so easy now. I can't speak for your boat, but the way they set it up now, sailing the boat is, I don't know, it's so easy.
And the sheets are led through the bimini now.
Yeah.
Except for the Screecher. We have to run those on the outside. So as long as you run the Screecher lines before you take off, you don't have to leave the cockpit for that either. But yeah, they're not fed under.
Yeah, one of the decisions that they made before our boat, we didn't recommend this, and we don't have a traveler, and I know the older boats have the traveler, and it's controversial, I guess, for some hardcore sailors. We never use a traveler on a catamaran. We use a traveler all the time in the motto. So we never miss the traveler, on this boat. I know you get to sail out further, if you're going downwind, but we never really use the main going downwind. We would either use the Screecher or we use the Genoa, because, if you're putting the main out really far on one side, then you're blocking the jib or you're blocking the Screecher. So it really didn't make sense to have it even further out.
I hate to disagree with them, but I think we miss the traveler a little bit because you have some control with it that you don't have without it. When you're putting your sail way out to the side for downwind or something, for instance, we had to tie an extra line as a preventer on it to keep it from coming in accidentally jibing or anything. Where I think if you have the traveler and you can feed the traveler out that way, it helps to hold it out. And then also the other thing that we had to do is when we were, and this doesn't have to do with the traveler, but maybe a pole or different ways that different boats did it. When you're using the Genoa and you're going downwind and you don't want it to fold in on you, we tied what they call it, a barber hauler
Yeah.
to it to tie the line to pull it out even further and hold it out. And we had to kind of Google and look up how to do that and stuff.
Mhm.
So there is a little bit of an issue with downwind sailing when you're in big waves. It's going to happen no matter what you're in, that the sail's going to want to fold in. So those were the only issues really that we had with the
So
sails.
yeah, we worked around
We found a workaround, but I just wanted to put it out there that we did have to find a workaround for that.
Yeah, when you're on Antares, definitely, if you haven't used a barber hauler before, definitely ask them how to use it, because it really helped out a lot. And like Jan said, when you have the jib out and you're, the cat or a monohull for that example is, you're in big waves, and let's say it's a beam reach, so the wind's on your beam, the waves on your beam, if you're going to collapse that sail, and that barber hauler basically just keeps that sail. It's almost like a whisker pole for the monohull sailors out there, or people use whisker pole before. It keeps that sail out, so you have a lot more surface area for the wind, and it doesn't collapse and make a lot of noise, all that good stuff.
And when we're saying jib, we're using jib and Genoa interchangeably. Sorry if we're confusing you.
Now, and this is another controversial topic, but I'm just gonna throw it out there. The self-tacking jib, I don't think is worth it by any stretch. I talked to Antares, it's in the mold of our boat, where the track should be. They didn't take it out, which is kind of weird. I don't think you should have one, unless you're in the BVIs and doing a lot of tacking back and forth, and 15 knots of wind, et cetera. And the reason why, and correct me if I'm wrong with anybody on the call that has one, is it's a small sail, so it's more of a storm sail. You can use the Genoa for the same purpose. You can reduce the Genoa to a storm size. Yeah, you have to tack it across, but it's so easy to tack now. If you use the self-tacking jib, then you have to bring the self-tacking jib down, you have the Genoa on the track. I don't think it's really necessary unless you're doing a lot of chartering, like I said, in the BVIs, where it's a Francis Drake channel going back and forth. We did tack a lot in some. When I say tack a lot, we may tack 10 times a day. In some circumstances, most of the days we were on one tack for 1,000 miles. So if you're ordering a boat, I personally wouldn't do the self-tacking jib, but that's my opinion.
I was going to say, so we're like right now, all of our sailing is in San Francisco Bay. So
yeah,
we're tacking, and we have the self-tacking jib, which is very, and we're just learning, but it's, I might tack, every 8-9 minutes just because I'm in a raccoon strait. So yes.
Yeah. And it's perfect for that. You really need it, especially in Raccoon Strait, where you can have so much current going against you there.
You're familiar with it.
Yeah, we're very
It's nice
familiar.
to-
We
yeah.
learned. We spent several years on San Francisco Bay, so we sailed all over there.
It's really nice to have something that can respond that quickly. So in those conditions, absolutely, it's perfect.
Yeah,
But we tacked, I think, a total of maybe 6 times going up Brazil.
yeah, we didn't tack very much at all.
I look forward to that day.
Yeah, like I said, if you're in the San Francisco Bay and BVI, that's a very good example. We tacked them. We on J24s there. But yeah, if you're in that kind of close proximity, a lot of boats like the BVIs, that sort of thing, then it makes complete sense.
Yeah.
But if you're like sailing the Eastern Caribbean or going across Pacific, you're going to be on one tack, for thousands of miles. Yep. Okay. Any other questions? We'd love to answer anything you guys have.
This has been very helpful for us. This is Brent again, leaving from San Diego in a couple of months. Thank you so much for spending the time. I'm sure things will come up, and look forward to connecting with you again soon.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
no
absolutely.
problem.
Absolutely. Yeah. And feel free. I'll send my contact information, definitely, reach out if you have any questions. Like we don't have the hybrid model, I know they're making a lot of advancements up there. I don't know, it's probably too late now, but push for a lot of solar, as much solar as you can put on that roof. We don't have a wind generator either. We had a wind generator on the last boat. I have a lot of opinions on that too, as anyone see.
But we have friends that love it and friends that don't. So that's a
Right.
preference.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we've been asking. I know the first 3, 69, 70, and 71, right, are all hybrid. There's been a lot of question as to where would you put more. There's been a lot of answer, which is we're not putting more. So that's kind of where it stands right now. So we might be talking wind.
Yeah, so there's not anywhere you can put on the Bimini. What they did he explained, Mariano and Sancho explained they changed the configuration for the solar, because we have 4 300s on board right now, and you guys are going 6 300s, right? Because they're actually reducing the walkway and putting more solar on the same Bimini with a different mold on top.
Yep.
6, yeah.
Yeah, but you're still going to be on top of that coach roof, which is, on top of the Bimini, which is going to be impacted by the sail shadow and the boom shadow when you're under sail. And I actually took a picture of a boat in Grenada that actually did exactly what I want. And it's very simple. It's just a little bit of stainless. So they're going to put, it's not the most beautiful design, but it will not extend the boat length because of the dinghy.
Right.
And actually it would be better because it'll shadow the dinghy from rain. So it would it's going to be, I think, a win-win. But we're going to do, I think, the work in Grenada, I think Guatemala. We're very familiar with Guatemala. If the folks, anyone is going there, we have a house there, so we know that area very well. And they do great stainless work, that sort of thing. It's very, very cheap there.
In comparison.
Yeah. And the folks that on the call that are going down to Argentina, et cetera, Grenada is a fantastic place to get boat work done. I updated the slides, but didn't take it. But Grenada is very easy. They speak good English. You can get parts delivered from the States, fairly easy there. They have 2 marine stores, Island Water World and Budget Marine, that are basically owned by West Marine, I think, or they source out parts from West Marine. So it's so easy to get parts there. It's really a breath of fresh air after being a Suriname in Brazil for so long.
Yeah.
Hey, Dave and Janice.
Hey there.
Yeah.
I just wanted, sorry, I've had a lot going on here. We just moved from St. Louis to New Hampshire and we're still unpacking and everything. Thank you so much for this presentation as one of the next ones to launch this coming October, November. We are keen to also see the recording because we missed the first part because I don't understand time zones. I think 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, whenever the hell it starts. Back to the solar, and I know Brent is keen on this too. We are counting on the technology to take the solar panels, the 6 that are at 300 watts. And I hope that, and we talked about this before on a different call, take those to 400 and the boat will be at 2,400 for the new hybrids. And maybe that's years away and maybe it's around the corner, but we're okay with 1,800 with the boat, but it sure would be nice to have more, as you have mentioned. So.
Yeah, I think you're gonna find, you're getting the hybrid, you said?
Yes, we're launching splashing in October, November.
I think you're gonna find you're gonna want more, just for your own peace of mind and comfort level with your battery situation. If you're not bringing up your boat to, close to 100% every night, then you're gonna want more.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing, Janice, to consider is the charging that, what's it called? Sorry. It's what electric cars do when they brake and coast.
Yeah, the hydro.
Regeneration?
Regeneration, yeah, not remedial. I knew there was a good word for it. That is supposedly, and it's not yet to be proven on Jerome's boat, the first hybrid launching soon. If that's the case, then you should be able to charge all night while you sail and there's no solar. So not counting on it, just hoping for a lot of good stuff there. I think Brent will corroborate that. Yeah, that's the hope for increased battery charging.
Yeah,
If not, we're coming to Guatemala for a stainless steel support structure.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'll share all information. So, and I know a lot of people are getting hybrids, and we can talk about that. I think it's a really cool technology. I think it's great. We really like our generator because it's very quiet. It's in the front. We don't hear it running. It is another engine that we have to maintain, but they are not our primary engines either. So,
and it's diesel.
And it's diesel running from the same tanks. I really like our generator still. Now I know that the hybrids also have a generator equivalent or something of big high alternators on the engines themselves, but you're gonna have to run them midship, which is gonna be pretty loud, I think.
Right.
The engines are pretty quiet. I mean, they're not so loud, but it's nice when you're at anchor, you run the generator. We don't literally hear the generator at all running.
Not really.
What do you guys have? Do you have Yanmar 40 or did you bump up to the 56 like Two Fish 2?
No, we stayed at the 40. Honestly, the 40, we had a 75 on Island Packet. We had 42s on our catamaran. I'm trying to think the right words here. The 40s, I think, were plenty of power, honestly. Like, I didn't feel that we were under power on a motor aspect. It's more fuel efficient, obviously. We did, I can talk a lot about the boat now. I love the boat, by the way. We did get the manual transfer pump for the fuel. The way that the Antares is set up, there's 2 fuel tanks. And because we have the generator on one side and we had some issues with the alternator on one side, we never had to transfer the fuel from one side to the other, but I'm glad we had that the ability, and we did test that out.
We thought we were going to have to.
Yeah, we thought we were going to have to, and it sucked to have all this fuel, basically full fuel tank on one side and an empty fuel tank on the other, and you have some issues. So I'm glad we put that in. I think that's kind of worth it just for peace of mind, if nothing else.
The only time I think that we might have been underpowered would have been going up the Suriname River. It's easily solvable. You go when the current is in your favor, not when it's against you. So even though the tide was going in when we went in, you still have the river coming down, and we still had current going against us. It just wasn't 6 knots at that point. It was only maybe 3 knots or 4 knots. And so if you're going to go up a lot of rivers and you're going to go against a lot of current, then you might want a little more power. But I mean, that's going to be this much of your sailing, just a little bit of your sailing compared to everything else. Normally, we don't need that, anything more than that at all. And when we went up Suriname River, we actually made headway of 3 knots?
Yeah.
3 knots. So it wasn't fast, but we could do it. However, if we weren't aware of the whole tidal swing situation and everything, and we went totally against it, we'd have gone backwards.
Like Raccoon Straits,
Yeah, like Raccoon Straits. We got stuck in a little J24. We were being pushed backwards and made no headway, but but those times are few and far between. Otherwise, I'm happy with the power that we have.
Yeah, I didn't think that we needed more power on the motor side. I mean, we sail a lot. It's a sailing boat, right? So we tend to sail, drives people crazy, but we'll sail with, 3 knots at the speed over ground. So, we don't mind.
We're not in a hurry.
Yeah.
What's to hurry?
Yeah. Come on, any other questions?
So actually got a question just on the solar power on the rooftop. Are you able to walk on that? Because I know they've the walking area has really been compressed for getting to the boom and out on there. And I'm always hesitant to step on a solar panel unless it's one of the real thin flexy ones.
Yeah, do not step on the solar panels. Yeah, you're absolutely right. The flat ones, they're not as efficient right now, at least, when we were looking at them a couple of years ago, the thin ones, they also had some fire issues because they were generating a lot of heat under. We had some friends that actually caught fire. Their canvas for the flat ones. The ones that they have on board are very, they do get very hot. Just because the sun's beating on them. But yeah, do not step on them. But I don't know how the new hybrid model is laid out. I know they said that they reduced the walking platform on the Bimini because obviously to accommodate the more solar. There's a walkway up there, near the boom. I got to be honest with you, I don't think we had to go up there that much. I mean, really just to wash the boat down, and you can pull the boom over to the side. We had in-mast furling, so we're not pulling, the sail down to a sail bag, et cetera, like we did on our old boat. So very rarely, it's mostly just washing the boat down or washing the solar down.
Hey, David.
Yeah.
Another question I'd heard, I think from a previous note on the water catchment system, you were having airlock issues. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, I can't figure it out, to be honest with you. We still have those airlock issues. So when it's pouring down rain, when it's raining quite a bit, it's not an issue at all because obviously the water's funneling through and it fills up the tanks very fast. When you're underway, what we do is we wait about 15 minutes, for the salt water to wash down. We'll clean off, we can see up in the Bimini, the channels up there. I'll clean them off and then I'll dump that water into the tank. There is a filter system that goes before it goes into the tank as well, near the galley. The problem at sea is that you're rocking pretty good, so that the water on the Bimini is splashing around and gets that airlock issue. I don't know what the answer is. So what we do is we just close it off. I wait like 5 seconds and then turn it back on. And it seems like it'll fill up the water and then the air bubble will come out and then it'll go into the tank.
But you had to physically put something through a couple times, right?
No, I tried that. Yeah, like Jan's saying, I tried to put like a little hose in there to keep from creating an airlock in there, but that didn't seem to work. But honestly, I got to be honest with you, I didn't spend a whole lot of time on trying to diagnose and troubleshoot the problem even more. But yeah, at anchor, it's not a problem. At sea, it was definitely, because we had all these squalls coming through and dumping a ton of rain, and it was just kind of disheartening not to catch all that water all the time.
Thank you.
Yep.
If we find an answer, we'll let you know.
Yeah, and I haven't written, I mean, it's a new, there's only been, I think, about 6 or 8 boats built, I think, with a new Bimini. So I did put that on the group, and I don't think anyone really responded correctly on that one, of catching that. But
Mark had mentioned that Sancho and the team are looking into it, but I haven't heard anything either.
The problem is that they'll have to recreate the situation. So they're gonna have to try to do the water collection underway.
Yeah, or simulate it with a hose. You can do it with a hose pretty easily too. But yeah, I don't know what's happening. It could be our boat only. I don't know if it's every boat, but I couldn't figure it out yet. But again, like I said, I spent, probably 2 hours trying to figure it out. So I it's not a long time.
Maybe in Grenada.
Yeah, maybe Grenada. I'll look at it. Okay. Anyone else?
Hi, everyone. I just put in the chat a company that's now doing walk-on solar panels. They're saying there's about an 8% loss in comparison to not being able to walk on them, but nonetheless, people are working on it. I've just watched videos. I haven't had any personal experience with them, but they look interesting.
Yeah, they're definitely, I mean, solar's changing tremendously, even from when we had our old boat in 2007. They're way more efficient than they were, and it's only 13 years ago. So, they're definitely getting more and more efficient. But I can't recommend more solar enough, because, the other issue too. So when we run and I don't know why this happened. So one of our alternators never worked from the factory, and we're still looking at that in Grenada. So our starboard engine alternator never worked, and I don't know why. The port side, we get about 70 amp hours, but it's not consistent 70 amp hours, and we're not sure why either. So we gotta look into that. So it fluctuates. It'll go for 70 amp hours. That's our alternator, and then I'll go down to 15, 30, 70, and there's no fluctuation with the RPM. So I'm not exactly sure why that is. And Mariana said that's normal, and I don't think that's correct. So we're gonna look at that in Grenada as well. But even at 70 amp hours, we're depleting, close to 250 amp hours on a normal day. So that would be, 5-6 hours of running the engine, which is not, obviously with no solar on a cloudy day, that's kind of not acceptable. It's.
How many solar controllers do you have? Is it divided by areas, or do you just have,
I think there's 2 solar controllers on the boat, but don't quote me on that.
like port and starboard?
Yeah,
Okay, that would be important.
but don't quote me on that. I'd have to look that up.
Because, I mean, my understanding with solar is that whatever the lowest, the solar panel with the least amount of sun is regulating the whole system that's connected to that same solar controller. So in other words,
Yeah.
if you've got 3 solar panels that are getting full sun, and you've got one that's only getting 20% sun,
Right.
and it's on one controller, that's the regulation. So they're all running at 20% until you free up that one.
Yeah.
Right. And when I look at the battery monitoring system, I can see, on a cloudy day or a sunny day, it's 1200 watts solar, on a sunny day, we're getting about 1100 watts, and it depends on, where the sun is, if it's 10 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I get all, if they're a little bit dirty, the solar, at anchor in a very controlled environment, that's working pretty well. It's the alternators on the engines that are the issue at the moment.
Just, I've got the original 200 watts of solar, so I'm just jealous of, I'm hearing you guys talk about this and saying you need more, and I'm like, more? I just want like a little tenth of that. So
Yeah, but you also have gas, right? You have propane and that sort of thing, so you don't rely on it.
yeah, actually, I've got I got propane, I got the diesel generator, and I've got a wind generator that was installed on it. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And as far as solar panels, not for those of you who have just bought new, because you got to wear yours out first. We were watching an HH presentation, HH Catamaran. So on one of their new boats, they've actually worked with a specific manufacturer, solar panel manufacturer, to actually make panels to fit everything on the bimini, like all the little nooks and crannies. So you're not dealing with rectangles, you're dealing with strips that fit in areas.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, oh, that is such a good idea.
So maybe we'll figure out who that manufacturer is and let's talk to them. And because I only have the original 202, which really doesn't help much. I mean, I guess it keeps the batteries topped off when it's sitting on the hard, but outside of that, I'm not really sure it's doing all that much when we're out sailing. But we haven't sailed our boat that much. We only got it last summer and only spent about 3 weeks at sea. So,
Yeah.
and that was
just,
right, Maria?
David,
A lot more time working on the boat than sailing it. But we're going to.
yep, we're same thing, bought a boat, learning to sail, retiring, pretty much in that order. And it's just been right now San Francisco Bay. So just day sailing at the moment. And but plan is within the year we'll be probably heading down to Sea of Cortez. So
James, what was your sail like from Ventura you went from Ventura to
so
right?
actually I did not well we had it brought up or we sailed it, pretty much just motored it up from Santa Barbara to Ventura, or no, from Ventura to Santa Barbara, and then we had somebody bring it up for us because we just like the weather. This was in November, so they were just waiting for the weather window, and it took them about 3 days to pretty much motor up. They were just kind of bashing the whole way. So yeah, there was not it was not great for them coming up. So it probably was not a bad thing not to be on for the first
so it wasn't a
experience.
sailing experience then.
No. So
Well,
hey, David.
we live in Southern California. We went up and saw your boat before you bought it. I think we were the first. We didn't buy it. We already bought one, but we went to look at it.
So yeah.
Congratulations on joining the family and buying it. It seemed very clean to us.
I gotta say, Ricky, the owner, just took beautiful care of it. So I've been very fortunate, especially since, like I said, not sailors. So the whole Antares family and this boat in particular has been a very good experience.
Hey,
Oh,
David.
Good.
David.
Yeah.
Hey, on your, you're looking at adding solar on the back of the Bimini. How many panels are you looking at? 2 or 3?
I love to get 3 400s or 4 300s on the boat. We haven't measured it completely, and there's going to be an overlap. So if you look at the GT model, there's probably about 1.5 feet bimini that they're not using in the back. I think they used to put like old KVHs, I believe, domes up there, that sort of thing. We have a little Wi-Fi extender up there we'll probably take down, but we'll overlap there and then try to go basically to the back of the back of the davits. Yeah, that's kind of the area, but we have not measured at all.
Okay.
So either we're trying to put I guess perpendicular, I'm trying to think of the right word, perpendicular, I guess the right word, or horizontal to, the side of the boat, so they're running long ways, so we can put 4 or 3 on there. But again, I haven't measured, and I'll post once I get that up. The problem with, again, putting the bimini, I know you're talking about, adding the real estate and then using all the real estate of the bimini. Again, it's under sail when you're blocking all that. That's the issue that I have. And I'd like to have more solar that's or at least not shielded by the sails when we're under sail. It's kind of the hope that we have. Because when you're under sail, you're using the autopilot, you're using all the instruments, you're using the radar, and you're using the refrigeration, and you're using the stove and the oven, that sort of thing. So it's definitely taxing on the system. The lithium, you know, I know we discussed a lot of problems. The lithium and the inverters and all that they're all Victron. I'm very happy with them, you know, so we can run air conditioning at anchor, we can run, you know, the stove at anchor, we don't need to run the generator. The only reason we need to run the generator is to you know, recharge the batteries. And I think if we solve the solar problem by doubling the solar, we'll have to run the generator maybe once a week, you know, just for maintenance, hopefully. That's the goal. Oh, I really want to live on. Yeah,
I'm suspect or pessimistic, I would say, about the regeneration under sail. I just don't know how efficient that's going to be. And then, as you say, at anchor with the shading from the boom and whatnot, I'm pretty convinced that when we get to Grenada, we're gonna extend and add solar as well.
yeah. I did talk to a company in Grenada at Spice Island Marinas. That's where we got hauled out. They would do it for us. They would add the bimini and the solar. We've been in Grenada for 3 years, you know, previously. So we, you know, off and on for the hurricane seasons. So we've been to Grenada. We love Grenada, but we want to spend more time in Guatemala. You know, we have a dock and a house there, so that's why we're getting done there. But there's no reason why I wouldn't get done in Grenada. They have fantastic resources there. So I would highly recommend them too. And they have all the tools and experience to do. It's not that hard to do. Just add another solar controller and a couple more panels.
And get somebody who could do good stainless. That's the key for me.
Yeah, and polish the welds and all that. I mean, we've had a lot of stainless done in the past, and you know, we know a lot of people that got done in Grenada, and yeah, it's been fantastic. You know, so
one thing, if they don't have it, looking at just on your current setup, which I know it's like brand new, but increasing the amount of solar controllers you have, because like they were saying, it's like the more, you know, the ideal is one controller per panel, and then you don't have any issues, like each panel can run at its peak efficiency, or, you know, looking at how they're being shaded, like if you're typically get, you know, a starboard versus a port side, so that you know, at least you've got one bank that's like in the shade, versus the other one that can do full efficiency. I'm not sure how they have it set up, but that is I've been looking at the whole solar power thing, both for the boat and my trailer. So it's just been, yeah, reading
David,
too much. Yep.
yeah.
David, can I just ask you to tell us a little bit more about the air conditioning and how you're getting through the whole night? Do you have DC air conditioning, or do you have 110, 220, or
Yeah, so the air
how
conditioning.
many of them are you using at one time?
Yeah, so there's 3 units. So the new models, I think, still have 3 units. I don't think that's changed at all. So there's basically one compressor that is in the downstairs on the starboard side, I believe. Yeah, in the aft cockpit. I'm sorry, in the aft stateroom, and that's the main stateroom, I guess. That's where Janice and I sleep. So there's one compressor there. There's one exactly on the opposite side, on the port side, and then there's one in the main salon. So the main salon will air condition the main salon, obviously, and then the forward port side, that's where it blows. That's where the ducting is working properly. I don't know the BTUs. Don't quote me on this. I think it's 12,000 BTUs on the main salon, 6,000 on the smaller staterooms. It does get very cold in there. What we do, they're 110, so we run them off the inverter. And so what we do is we'll put the air conditioning probably around like 82 degrees. Mostly what you want to do is get the dampness out, the humidity out, and it really cools the cabin down. When you get that 82 degrees, the compressor doesn't run that much. It's usually the fan that runs more than the compressor. I gotta be honest with you, we don't run the air conditioner all that much. It's only when we're at anchor, usually, obviously, and it's only if it's raining and really, really humid. But we're pretty conservative by using that air conditioner. just because we only have 900 amp hours and we can't regen. So the 900 amp hours, 24 volt, it's a lot of battery power. I mean, and you can deplete them to 20%, so down to 20% for the lithium. But the regen is our problem right now. That's the issue that we're having. So if we ran, let's say we ran the air conditioner all night, you know, I'm just throwing a number out there. We might use 10 to 15% of the battery power, maybe 20%. No, probably around 10 to 15% of the battery power. So if we're 100 on that one air conditioner and we weren't running the refrigeration, which definitely takes a lot of power, then we would probably be 85 in the morning. But then, you know, we have to regen that back up with solar. And, you know, with the refrigeration, all that stuff, that adds, you know, obviously more power consumption. I don't know if that answered your question or not, but it works great, you know. But.
Yeah, it did exactly what I was curious about. If they had been DC, because those were more efficient, which I heard that sometime in the future we might be, Antares might be going with DC air conditionings, but that's not now. So I was just kind of curious. And you're doing 110 volt and you're using about 200 amps.
Yeah, so that's correct. That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, our boat in April will have DC air conditioners in each hull, but the one in the salon they don't make a DC unit for that size, so that'll stay AC.
And run off
That's a
the
lot more efficient for sure.
Okay. Well, Maria and I want to thank you guys very much. We got to jump off.
Okay.
We look forward to meeting all of you.
Thank you.
Oh, well, I don't have the video on. There we go. Thanks,
Thank
everyone. I
you.
look forward to meeting all you guys like in person somewhere in the world. Bye.
Hey,
Take care. Thanks for joining.
hey, thank you very much. Appreciate everything. So,
Yep, of course.
Yeah.
okay. Take care.
Thanks,
Yeah,
everybody.
thanks, everyone. Thanks,
Yeah,
David.
thank you.
All right, thank you.